Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Speak Plainly podcast, where we speak plainly about things that matter. I'm your host, Owl Medicine, and today's topic is going to be all about taking good notes. Why does taking good notes matter? This isn't a college class, but it kind of is. Life is, anyway. Life is the ultimate classroom, and if you are like me and started life behind the start line, then it will benefit you greatly to start taking really good notes. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is what taking good notes means, what it's used for, and we'll look at a few of the these little unintended consequences that tend to make things really efficient or inefficient. And in this case, taking good notes is extremely efficient for being able to lead the life that you want to live. So, first thing is, what do I mean by taking notes? I mean, write stuff down. Really, you have to externalize things. And I don't care if it's actually writing things down. I prefer to write things down. And I think most people start this way. So, first step of taking good notes is to actually take good notes. You got to write stuff down. Write down your ideas. Write down your thoughts. Write down your feelings. One of the issues that most of the world has right now, at least most of our modern world, is we're extremely overstimulated. We're constantly fighting this uphill battle of having too much to do and not enough time and not enough energy. And we're really good at just consuming more stuff that can give us more energy, and we have incredible technology that allows us to do that with fairly low, pain, if you wanted, there wasn't as many ways to get fake energy 100 years ago between the coffee and drugs and pharmaceuticals and all of this stuff. There wasn't nearly as much opportunity for us to be able to just crank up our chi level to be able to do more. We had to do what we could do with the amount of chi that we have. Now, in our world, we have tons of things to do and tons of ways to supplement our chi. And that means that we can get going, and we can build a momentum in our life that is hard to put down because it's really enjoyable. And in that momentum, in these whirlwinds, how many times do you have awesome ideas or have this really cool thought go through your head, and then you try to recall it a little bit later and you can't? How neat would it be in 10 years, in even maybe 10 days, to actually look back at the things that you thought, to look back at the things that you thought about yourself. And especially when we're young, in our 20s and 30s, it's really important for us to write these things down. Now, I know that this is a very weird and uncomfortable thing, because I was told this over and over and over and over and over and over and over by my best friend. She told me constantly I needed to be writing stuff down because I had great thoughts and I had interesting inquiries, that sort of thing. And she told me that I would look back at them and dig through them one day, and I would be very glad that I had them. And I did buy journals and write things down occasionally, but not great at first. And it's sad, because now, having started and being near the end of writing a book, those kinds of thoughts formed me. Our thoughts, our ideas, our questions really allow us to get to know ourselves. And that's kind of commandment one for this life, as far as I'm concerned. Know thyself. I've talked about it 1,000 times. I didn't come up with that. That's super duper old, but know thyself. You got to get to know yourself. And the thing about a CSA, chronic stress adapted people who had lots of stress early in their lives, is we're biologically designed slightly differently. We are more reactive to our emotions and to our feelings and sensations in our bodies. We are more reactive to them because we're more sensitive to them. We feel, we experience these sensations in our body more strongly, and we experience them for longer. So it's easy for us to identify with our emotions and our sensations, and our prefrontal cortex isn't really able to do its job. We're not able to conceptualize ourselves in our context, which is really the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's what deals with our context. And that part of our brain isn't quite as turned on when we are in these high sensory experience moments. So if we write stuff down when we're in those moments, when we have these sparks of insight, even if you don't look at them for a really long time, write it down, keep them in a little journal. Let them be as disjointed as hell. It doesn't matter. Let them be super disjointed. I'm so glad that I have any of my writings and ideas from when I was young. I found poems and journal entries that I maybe only did, like, there were a couple of years where I found like 3 journal entries for the whole year. And that's just because I wasn't doing it. I was young. I was in my early 20s. I had other things to do, like live life rather than take notes on it. But at some point, it really pays to start taking notes on it, because that's how we get to know ourselves. Because if we can't tell what the context is, what our context is because of our strong emotions at a moment in time, writing these things down to be able to look at it later both allows us to get to know our own internal workings by looking at what we wrote, but also looking at where we belong in society and our peer groups and our professional experiences and professional hierarchies. We start to understand all of those things when we reference back and we look at our good notes and we understand the context that we were in there at the time and that we're in now. Taking good notes is really helpful for traumatized people. So that's the first thing. Taking any notes is really helpful for traumatized people because it allows us to find ourselves. It allows us to observe ourselves in a non-judgmental way, hopefully. So I told you that you could write stuff down or you could do it differently. There are lots of ways that you can take notes. I just had a visit with a friend of mine who is a circus acrobat and a phenomenal juggler. And when I was talking with him, we were talking about like my process with my book and his process working on a one-man show. Now, that's just one of the things that he's doing. He's on a 42-foot boat, a 42-foot double-masted schooner circus boat in Greece. And they've been doing shows off of this boat for a couple of years now with him as a part of it, and for years before that, before he became a part of this situation. And as odd and different as it sounds to be writing a book on trauma and to have this wonderful friend of mine who is building performances, it seems strange that we would have so many conversations about the parallels, but boy, did we. We had a ton of conversations about the parallels between our processes. And the heart of it all was that his job as a performer is to be able to find a way within his preferred mode of expression, performance and juggling and physical humor and all of the performance aspect of stuff, which is very different from my writing aspect. To take that medium and to communicate where he is in his life and what he's doing in his life with an audience. And that's actually exactly what I'm doing with my book. I am taking the last 30 years of my life, 35 years of my life here very soon in a couple of days. I'm taking the last 35 years of my life and I'm really coming to terms with every bit of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. And both of these are good notes. Do you understand what I mean by that? Both of these options, both me writing a book, me actually writing stuff down, that's great. That's good notes. Now, the reason I'm able to write the book because I took good notes during my own thought processes and during studying so I could understand for myself and for my own growth and healing how the human mind works, how neurobiology works. I studied this stuff for myself so I could understand it better for myself, so I could figure out what was happening inside of me and find ways to change the things that I really wanted to change. And really all I'm doing with this book is going through and saying, here's the stuff, here's a little blip into my life. I had stuff I wanted to change. Here's what I learned about how to change it. And trying to do that in a fun, engaging, meaningful way. He's trying to do the same thing through performance art. Both of these are good notes. The reason his is still good notes without writing anything down necessarily is he will write stuff down. He will have to write out exactly what he's doing for this kind of one-man performance thing. There's 3 different parts that he's talking about building, and we talked about the arc of it all and what the meaning of it, what the meaning behind it is, and how we can subtly influence the mind of the observer, of the audience. Because really what we're doing, whether we're writing a book or whether we are performing for someone, what allows us to connect with another person, no matter the medium, is saying, this is me and this is where I'm at, honestly. And unfortunately, the reality of who we are and where we're at, honestly, is very dependent upon our emotional states. Which is why today's topic is taking good notes, because traumatized people with trauma in their past, or chronic stress adapted people, our emotions are strong. And so when we feel some type of way, good or bad, the way that we view ourselves changes in that moment. And this is true for everybody, traumatized and not, but it's especially true for people with lots of chronic stress in their life and in their past. We identify with the emotions that we have, so then when we try to conceptualize ourselves, our self-concept is then emotionally determined. And that's the goal of taking good notes, is to no longer have our self-concept be emotionally determined. That is pretty much the only goal. We do not want our emotional states to control our self-concept. That is a recipe for disaster across the board for everybody. Do not let your emotional states be what determines your self-concept. Because that means your self-concept is either always going to be, as I used to call mine, the only thing that stops me from being a complete and utter narcissist is crippling self-doubt. Can anybody else relate to that? Because I said that, I meant that, I've said it for like a decade now. And now it's not quite as true, because I've learned to take good notes, and I have opinions of myself that I have worked hard to earn. And by work hard to earn, I don't mean like striving to prove myself, but working hard as in sitting with all of the discomfort and the judgments and the reality of my situations and the decisions that I have made. That's the work I'm talking about. I do that heavy, hard work to be like, okay, what decisions did I make? What was I ashamed of? What am I proud of? What did they interpret these things as? What did I really mean by it? And really sort stuff to the absolute most detailed description that I can. Doing that gives me an objective way to evaluate who I am and what I ought to be doing in that moment, because it stops me from identifying either as an utter narcissist or someone with crippling self-doubt. So then I don't go at things like an egoist or like someone with crippling self-doubt, which is basically shame. And shame's a downward spiral that doesn't help anybody. This doesn't need to be like a heavy-handed lecture. I really want you to get that you can take notes in lots of ways. You can do a daily journal, you can write a blog, you can do a video blog, you can open up your phone and talk to yourself in notes. That's it. Like, you can leave yourself little voice memos. I do that constantly. I leave little voice memos. I have my notes on my phone. And if you don't know this, I recently learned that you can pin notes in your phone so they like stay at the top. So now, like, my grocery list and my podcast episode topics and like hashtags and stuff like that are all on my phone in notes, but they're pinned to the top. So if you didn't know that, now you can organize your notes a lot better, because that made my life much easier. But all of these things are things that I know to be true because I took good notes. And really, taking good notes has allowed me to come to this place where it's this phrase that I've used in a couple of other podcasts previous to this, especially the one about my narcissistic father. I came to understand, I know that I know what I know. I'm going to say that again. I know that I know what I know. This is a very, very important thing for me because being raised by a narcissist, I had to give up my reality in order to feel like I was going to be accepted or loved. And so when I have a strongly held belief, I hold on to that super hardcore. But if I'm emotionally attached to a person or want to be emotionally attached to a person and they disagree with me, my default is to go, oh, well, I could be wrong and I don't know. And everything's up for debate. But I'm about to be 35 years old. That's bullshit. Not everything is up for debate. I know that. I know not everything is up for debate. I know that there are certain things that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, which is the kind of Christian version of I know that I know what I know. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. They ask you, do you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're saved and you're going to heaven? Well, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are certain things that I know for a fact, that I know to be true because I did as much studying and research as I possibly can on it. And then I wrote it down. In fact, the entire time I was doing that work, both the diving into myself, sitting with the discomfort, and in the research, I took good notes and I went over those notes over and over and over and over and over again. And I thought about it from 1,000 different ways from Sunday. And eventually I got to a place where I know that I know what I know. And that's the kind of security that we need. That's the kind of security that we all need to be able to navigate the world without like getting twisted by taking things personally or by other people's judgments of us. If we're like dead certain that we know what we know, then other people, they can and will misunderstand us, and that's going to be fine. They're going to get it wrong, and that's okay. That's not a problem because we know that we know what we know, which means being misunderstood is okay. How many of you have a real hard time with being misunderstood? Because I still have some problem with it, but I don't have nearly as much of a problem with it anymore because I know that I'm right. Not about everything, not about most things, but there are a few things that I know that I know. And the reason that I'm secure in that is because I reviewed it over and over and over and over and over again, not in a charged space, whether that's like positively charged with lots of extra energy or negatively charged where I feel like I don't have any energy. Up, down, and in the middle, I have been able to look at these things that I have done, said, thought, and studied. And by taking good notes, which is what every scientist needs to do, in order to be a good scientist, that's what makes a good scientist, is taking good notes. By doing that, I know certain things about me that are absolutely fundamentally undeniable. And if anybody wants to deny them, I can just shrug and walk on because I don't care, because I know that it's true. And that's the joy of taking good notes. We can't get there without good notes. Is this making sense to you? Is this making sense to y'all? Because this is super duper duper important. And like I said, I don't care how you take notes. Bring a pencil and paper with you everywhere that you go. I always do. I actually even bring fountain pens because I really like things that make me feel bougie. So having to work a little harder than is necessary, like by refilling my pens when I have conversions. So refilling my pens with a cartridge or with an actual little plunger thing is extra work, but the pens are beautiful and they feel really nice and I enjoy doing it. So they make me feel bougie. So I get to knock out two birds with one stone. I get to feel bougie while I'm writing my notes. Right, because taking notes isn't always fun until you start getting into the habit of it. Then it's really fun because then you know that you can just write this out and you can get it out and you can come back and look at it and maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't. But you know that having that there, because you've experienced having it there, can provide some inspiration down the road. And it may not, and in fact, it probably won't be the exact same inspiration that you had when you wrote it down, but that doesn't matter. Inspiration is inspiration. You don't need to pick up exactly where you left off when you wrote something down. So take good notes. Take really good notes. Like, write down your ideas and then try to go into details about them. You have an idea for a script, write it down, but don't just write the theme. Write down a few characters' names. Like really get as detailed as you can. That's how we take good notes. When we have a challenging situation, we just had Thanksgiving, we're moving into Christmas. When you have a challenging situation, one that's really good or really bad, especially, taking good notes can be a marvelous way to deal with it because then, as you write out what happened, you can get out some of the tension of the experience, and you can curse and scream all you want when you're writing it all down. But you'll feel better when you've written it down, and then you'll be able to look at it. And I'm sorry for anybody named Uncle Tommy, but that's just now my go-to for racist Uncle Tommy. You can sit down and write out the crap that you had with racist Uncle Tommy, and you can come up with all kinds of great little quips to say to him or whatever. It doesn't matter. But you taking good notes, writing down your own thoughts, allows you to not only know who you are, to come to know thyself, but it also allows you to appreciate your own thoughts. It legitimizes. It allows you to legitimize. The act of it legitimizes your own thoughts. I mean, when we learn to write papers in schools, you have to just go find black and white proof of something somewhere, in a magazine, a newspaper, a book, or somewhere, an article online, and then you can quote that. The only thing that they did was write stuff down. The process wouldn't be any different from going and just talking to some random person and then writing it down and quoting and quoting them. But it feels legitimate because it's been written down. And that carries through into us taking good notes for ourselves. When we start to take good notes and we go back and look at it, you will surprise yourself with how intelligent some of the stuff that you write is, how insightful some of it is. You will also be like, what in the hell was I thinking? Was I high? Was I on drugs when I wrote this? And that's good too. All of it is a part of it. Part of you is witty and smart and you got clapbacks for days. And then part of you is, duh. That's just the way that it goes for all of us. Writing those things down allows us to get to know ourselves. So when we do have those duh moments, we can be like, yeah, well, I've had those a million times before, and I even sat and read those duh moments and realized how confusing they were. All that does is mean that you're human, but none of that gets sunk into your brain until you externalize it, and that's the purpose of taking good notes. Anytime we're really experiencing life, we're experiencing it We're not thinking about it. It's very hard to experience and observe the experience, because that's what thinking is trying to analyze an experience. So you can't observe, analyze an experience while you're having the experience and fully experience it or expect your analyzation to be accurate. So being able to experience it and then just write down what you're experiencing and looking at that after allows you to get to know yourself more and more and more and more and more. Also, I know that you probably think I'm biased because I'm writing a book, but I'll have you know, I'm a terrible writer. Just not good. I don't think I'm any worse than the average person, but I would say the average person's not a great writer. And that's fine, because most of us aren't writing. So it's not that I'm biased because I wrote a book or I'm writing a book. I'm biased because the shit works. That's why I'm biased. Life is one giant experiment, and you can move through it without writing anything down. You can move through it without taking notes. But the only way that that's going to work for you is if you already have a blueprint. If you have a blueprint of who you are, what you want to do, what you want out of life, and where you're going, and how you want it to end, then fuck it. Don't take any notes. You don't need to. You're not trying to learn anything. You're just trying to move according to this predetermined path. And that's fine. That's totally okay. If that's you, do you, boo-boo. That's cute for you. I'd rather eat a pistol. I just can't handle that kind of thing, because every time I have relied on someone else to do something for me, it screwed me over, especially when I was young. And I mean, in a big way. I had a lisp until I was in 5th grade, and that was because during 4th grade, I got made fun of every single day so bad for lisping because I couldn't say my etheth, and whoever did lisp was hateful for putting an S in the word that describes that speech pathology. But I failed over and over and over again. I failed constantly with my speech pathology teacher person. In kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, I had to go to speech class, and my actual diagnosis was a lazy tongue. That's what they told me. They literally were like, there's something wrong with the way that you talk because you're lazy. That was told to me before I even really knew what lazy was. That was in 3rd grade. I don't know about you, but I don't know any 3rd graders that are lazy. They have tons of energy, and if they are quiet and reserved and feel lazy, it's because they're traumatized. It's because they're afraid. But for me, they failed me. They never helped me. I couldn't fix my lisp through speech class. But when I got a karaoke machine for Christmas, I used that karaoke machine that whole summer break the next summer, and I sat and I talked into that karaoke machine on a little cassette recorder over and over and over and over and over again, saying every single word I could come up with S's in it and listening back to it so I could figure out how to talk without a lisp, because I was tired of being made fun of. That's been the story of my life. Every time a system has been put into place to help disadvantaged people, it has never helped me. They've never worked. They've always failed. So for me, fuck your blueprint. For me, life is one big experiment. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. We're all making this shit up as we go along. Anybody who tells you different is full of shit, and they're too afraid to recognize that they're just following someone else's lead until the day they die because it's comfortable. Like I said, if that's you, do you boo-boo, but that's not me. And if that's not you either, you're gonna have to take good notes. You have to actually sit down and externalize the parts of you that are experiencing life, your emotions, your mind, your body, your spirit. You have to sit down and externalize them in a way that can be reviewed again. That's what I mean by take good notes. Again, it can be writing, it can be a video blog, it could be a regular blog, it could be performance art, it could be music, it can be many, 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 many things. But it has to be outside of yourself, and it has to be able to be reviewed later on down the line. And the more detail that you can get in it, the better. Right? Like if what you want to remember from a specific moment is a feeling, then maybe a music piece that you write is perfect for capturing that feeling. But if you are trying to understand the way that you think, you're going to have to use language to do that, because language is how we think. We don't think in some magical, like, amorphous way. We think through the language that we speak. We think in the language that we speak. There were many people in my acupuncture school that already went through medical school in Mexico, but they struggled to just get through the basics of acupuncture school because they think in Spanish. They can talk in English, they're fluent, but they think in Spanish. And that was a challenge for them. Being able to get through this program was a challenge for them because they have to read in one language, then translate it, think it through in Spanish, and then translate that answer again. So they're doing 3 times the amount of work that a native English speaker is having to do. You're going to have to think about that as well. You're going to have to recognize that if you want to understand the way that you think, you have to use language in your notes, because that's how thinking is processed. Thinking happens through language. So you can do lots of other ways, but when it comes to understanding how it is that you think, there is no way around it. Suck it up, write shit down, use words. If you want to understand how you feel, maybe you can do it another way. If you want to understand what's happening in your body, maybe you can do that in another way. But really, any of these things, we use language to express. So language is going to be the best way that we can expand on that. And I know this all seems weird and hard, and you're probably still like, yeah, but you wrote a book. And I'm telling you, it does not matter. I was not good at describing much of anything because I didn't try, I didn't practice. But once I started taking good notes and I was trying to understand myself, as I took the notes, I was like, it's kind of like this, but it's not really like that. It's kind of like this, but it's not really like that because it's also kind of like this. And the more I did that, the better I got at explaining things. So if one of the reasons that you enjoy listening to this podcast is because you like the way that I describe things, thank you. That's awesome. I love that. I've worked hard to be able to describe things this way because I think these are important conversations to have. And the most of the places that we're having these important, like, neurobiological conversations, they're happening in a place where it's so thick with jargon, it's not easily accessible to the regular person. That's why over the years of me learning this stuff, me taking good notes over and over and over and over again has allowed me to integrate this information into myself well enough that I can explain it to an 8-year-old. And for me, that's the rule. If you can't explain whatever it is you're describing to an 8-year-old, you don't understand it. You have to be able to explain things in the simplest way, in the plainest way possible, from an 8-year-old all the way up to a graduate level. If you really understand something, you should be able to explain it to an 8-year-old or to a college student. And the only way that you're going to be able to get to know something that well is to take good notes. Everything that you've learned well, you took good notes on. It doesn't matter what it is. Taking good notes is super duper, duper, duper important. So that's what I want you to do this week. I want you to start taking really good notes. Go get yourself a beautiful journal. And as soon as you get that journal, I want you to find a nice pen. Just a pretty one. It doesn't need to be a fountain pen. It could be a gel pen, a crystal gel pen, or whatever you want. But get 2 things that you find enjoyable. Don't get the cheapest pen. Don't get the cheapest pad of paper, because you want to take good notes, which means you're going to want to enjoy this. So find things that you find like comfortable to hold. like a pen that you find comfortable to hold, a journal that isn't too big, isn't too small, allows you to write in it with plenty of room, and you don't feel cramped. And as soon as you get that journal, I want you to scribble all over the first page and a half even. Because one of the things I know is really hard for people when we buy a beautiful journal for ourselves, we don't want to mess it up. Like, but it's so pretty. So I want you to immediately fuck it up. Just immediately fuck up your journal. When you go and grab that today, as soon as you buy it, I want you to rip out the front page or scribble on the front page. I want you to somehow injure the perfectness of that journal. That way you don't have any barriers psychologically from writing in it. I want you to do all of that. Dirty that journal and start taking good notes. Now, when to take good notes? Okay. We all have these little moments of inspiration. Those moments of inspiration, I want you to pull out that pad and paper and write it down. You can do it in your notes, but how many times, your notes in your phone, how many times have you had an idea and you go to pull it out and you pull out your phone, and before you even make it to the notes section, you're already on Instagram? Before you ever to make it to the notes so you can write down your idea, you're already on Facebook, or you're already on TikTok, or you're already on LinkedIn, or you're checking your email, or whatever it is. That's why I like having a pencil and paper, because it allows me to skip that whole distraction. That's an easy, like, it happens to me constantly. I'll try to go pull out my phone to write something down, and I wind up distracted on some other app. And that's with Instagram and them being on the very, very, very far, like all the way the last page of my phone, inside one of those little boxes that have a bunch of stuff in it. So it's not big, it's not obvious, it's as visually small on my screen as I can get it, and it's off of my homepage screen. It's as far over to the right as I can get it to be, and I still wind up doing that instead of taking notes sometimes when I use my phone, which is why I don't do it very often. Sometimes I do because that's all I have on me, but most of the time I have a pencil and paper somewhere tucked on me, on my persons, in my laptop bag, which I carry around with me all the time now because I'm writing the book, and whenever I have a spare moment, I try to do something with it. But try to write stuff down when you have the inspiration. So there's time number one. Write stuff down when you have the inspiration. When you feel that spark of inspiration, grab your pad and your paper and go write it down. There's something different about doing it analog. And you spend so much time on your phone, it doesn't feel special. Nothing that you do on your phone feels special because you're always on your phone. At least probably 6 or 8 hours a day, you're staring at your phone. That's more time than we probably look at our children. So nothing that you're going to do on your phone is going to feel special. And this is important because you are special. And a huge part of the reason that you aren't taking good notes is because you don't think that you're special. You don't think you're special enough. Like, yeah, I have ideas, but they're the same as everybody else. Yes, you do have ideas, and they are the same as everyone else's. So fucking what? Me too. Like... I kind of struggled a little bit with Gabor Mate's new book. I love it, and I've talked about how much I love it, but also I felt weird because I was very proud, and I am very proud of what I'm writing and the concepts I've been working on for years, and I've developed them quite well. And then I find Gabor Mate's new book, and obviously he's been a huge influence of mine, but his new book is basically saying the exact same thing that I'm saying, and there's been neat things that I'd figured out that were like just extensions of like Robert Sapolsky's work and Gabor Mate's work that were kind of logical extensions that I was like, oh, I feel this way, I think this, and the more I thought about it, the better it got. And then I see these same concepts in his book, and I'm like, well, shit. Part of me is like, awesome, he thinks the same thing that I'm thinking, but then the other part of me is like, yeah, he's already said it, and he is the authority. Who the fuck are you? There's still that feeling of like, who the fuck are you? And that's the feeling that stops us from taking notes. And the answer is, I'm me. There has never been a me before, and there will never be a me again. There is nothing new under the sun. Everything is a remix. So write your shit down. Write it down, get it out, and then over the years, as you have more and more experiences, you will become more and more unique. And because you took good notes, you'll be able to look at these different moments in your life, these different thoughts, experiences, and bodily sensations, and you'll be able to put them together in a beautiful and unique way that is special to you, using the exact same information that everyone else has. But it will be uniquely you. Every musician has a similar problem. There's only so many notes in a scale. And like every song is in a key. And there's only so many notes within that key. There's only so many intervals that can be had. And it's really not that many. So every single song in the world sounds at least a little bit like another song. And all the really good ones sound a lot like another song. Now you know when to take good notes. Take them in the moment, when that moment calls on you. Because as you move through life, later on, down the road, when you're able to collect all of those things and you put them together in a new and unique way that is unique to you, because nothing in it is new, it's just compiled in a specific way. In the same way that you and I are made up of the exact same molecules, they're just organized in a slightly different way. Our DNA is just barely different from each other's. We're all human. They're barely different from each other, but they manifest in unique iterations. You are a unique iteration, and you deserve to be notarized as much as anyone else does. And if you don't take you seriously, no one is going to take you seriously. And by taking good notes, what you're doing, when you review those good notes and you really spend time with it and you're like, ugh, and you're like, what was I trying to get out of this? And what did I mean here? And you actually spend time in that discomfort and in all of that, you become very secure in who you are and you become unfuckwittable. And that's the goal, because if you're unfuckwittable, that basically means that you know how to keep yourself regulated. And as a traumatized person, if you can keep yourself regulated, you win. Fuck it, as a regular person, if you can keep yourself regulated, you win! Keeping ourselves regulated is really hard in a very dysregulating world. And I don't mean all the time, but you win! Because that shit's really, really hard. So taking good notes is a really powerful way for all of us to be able to come to know who we are, what we think, how we feel, the things that lead up to those situations. When we write them down, we write down the things that happened before and the things that happened after. We start to build ideas of how we operate in the world, what our patterns are, what our patterns of thought, what our patterns of behavior are, what our emotional patterns are. And when we know our own patterns, we can know ourselves. And when we review our own thoughts and our patterns, we can come to know ourselves beyond a shadow of a doubt. We come to know ourselves well enough that we can be misunderstood, and that's okay. Being able to be misunderstood is a very, very powerful, powerful tool. It's so freeing. If you know who you are and you can be misunderstood, you're set. And the fastest way to get there, as far as I know, is take really good notes. So that's today's podcast. Take good notes, y'all. Write your shit down. Write your thoughts down. Write your feelings down. Write your emotions. Write your sensations down. Do something with them. Put them out in the world. Because your thoughts, when they're in your head, are both subjective and the object. You are the subject and you are the object. You are observing your own thoughts, which means you are the object, but they're your thoughts. So they're subjective. Something can't be both subjective and objective and get very far. If you really want to know yourself, you can't think about yourself inside your head. You have to write out what you think about yourself and then look at it. There's many ways to do this, but the basic, most fundamental way is actually writing things down. Write them out by hand. Use a pen and paper. Keep it off of your phone, because doing it on your phone is going to make it much less enjoyable. It's going to make it much less unique. It's going to make it much less powerful and important. So writing things down on paper is really important. Write it down, spell it out, review it. Get to know yourself. Life's one big experiment, and you are the mad scientist running it. Use yourself, use your life like the beautiful experiment that it is, And if you want it to be successful, if you want your personal experiment to be successful, take good notes. And that is today's podcast. So, thank you everybody for hanging out with me. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of today's podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. Consider buying a coffee. All the links are listed below. And if you haven't already signed up to become a Patreon member, or you are a Patreon member and you haven't responded to the emails whether or not you're going to be available on Wednesday, please do that. I look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday on my birthday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, and we're just going to watch some effed up videos. I'm going to give you a couple of quick ways to masterfully be able to re-regulate yourself in no time flat so you can move on with your life when things do throw you off. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you very much for spending time with me. I love you so much. And remember, stay curious and stay uncomfortable.